Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Week 0 is right around the corner. We are hyped on this channel. Be sure to stick around during the season. We're not just an off-season channel. We are a regular season and postseason channel as well. Be sure to stay tuned for our Week 0 preview coming up this Friday. But first, we are going over our full 2024 postseason predictions in this video. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy it. Feel free to comment if you disagree or if you agree on anything said in this video. And without further ado, let's get right into it, starting with the conference champions. If you haven't seen our conference predictions, be sure to go and check those out after this one. We have a playlist right on our channel. Feel free to check that out. And a little spoiler here for those who haven't seen those. These are our top teams in each Power 4 conference. And let's start with the ACC. Our top 2 teams are going to be Miami at 11-1 with a 7-1 conference record, and Florida State also 11-1 but with an undefeated conference record. This would be a rematch of their Week 10 matchup. We, of course, have Florida State winning that one, but we actually think Miami is going to put on a bit of a revenge performance, and we have them walking out of Charlotte with the ACC title. Florida State is going to have the edge defensively, but we think Mario Cristobal and Miami will learn from their mistakes and become ACC champs for the first time since the championship game was introduced back in 2005. Next, let's take a look at the Big Ten. We have the Oregon Ducks facing off against the Ohio State Buckeyes in Indianapolis. This is also going to be a rematch game. The Buckeyes will go to Eugene in Week 7, a game we have them winning, and ultimately we'll have them doing it again, beating Oregon to win the Big Ten championship. We like Oregon this year. In our last video, we talked about Dylan Gabriel as our Heisman favorite, but we think that Ohio State's defense is going to be able to nullify what should be an elite Oregon offense, and that is why we have Ohio State winning twice against the Ducks. And funnily enough, that would make it 2 years in a row where Oregon faces their eventual championship foe in Week 7 before losing to that team twice. They did it last year against Washington, if you forgot. And after the Big Ten, let's take a look at the Big 12. We are predicting a pretty chaotic season for that conference. Should be a ton of fun. There are a lot of fun picks for potential championship teams, but ultimately we settled on the Oklahoma State Cowboys facing the Utah Utes. And while we have a lot of faith in Mike Gundy and that Oklahoma State offense, we think the strength of Utah's defense, along with the return of Cam Rising, will be the ultimate factor in this game. We have Utah winning the Big 12 in their first season in the conference, and potentially their last season under Kyle Whittingham. Like the last 2 conferences, we have the championship game as a rematch. Utah goes to Stillwater in Week 4, a game we actually have Oklahoma State winning, but at a neutral site in Arlington, Texas, we see Utah taking home the gold in the Big 12. And for the last Power 4 conference, we have the big, the bad, the SEC. And we predict Georgia will be taking on Texas in the championship game. It's going to be a big year for newcomers. We have Miami winning their first title game. We have Oregon and Utah making their championships in their first year in their respective conferences. And we have Texas making it in the SEC in their first year. But unfortunately for the Longhorns, we think Georgia will just be a step above. Texas is going to have a solid team, but Georgia has them beat in experience, and that is why we have Georgia taking home the SEC title for the second time in 3 years. And to briefly go over the Group of 5 champions, we have Memphis beating UTSA in the American Athletic Conference. We have Liberty going over Jacksonville State in the Conference USA. We have our second Miami of Ohio, going over Northern Illinois in MACtion. We have Oregon State, we guess, winning the Pac-2. They're not allowed to play in the Mountain West, and they don't have a Pac-2 conference championship game. So by record, we have them winning the Pac-2 championship at 8-4. And we have the Broncos of Boise State going over Fresno State in the Mountain West. And in the Sun Belt, we have the East Division champs of App State taking on the West Division champs of Texas State, with App State pulling out the W. And with our conference predictions out of the way, let's get into our playoff prediction On your screen, you'll see our beautiful 12-team bracket. So let's start filling it out. At 1, we have the Georgia Bulldogs. Pretty self-explanatory. They'll be undefeated in this scenario with an SEC championship win, SEC bias, etc., etc. At 2, we have Ohio State. At 3, we have the Miami Hurricanes. And at 4, we have the Utah Utes. Now remember, the top 4 conference champions get the top 4 seeds and a first round bye in this format. This isn't our direct top 12 teams. This is just how we predict the seeding will go based on the conference championship games. And for the 7 at-large bids, we have at 5, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We haven't been able to talk about Notre Dame a lot on this channel, but we are predicting a big season for Marcus Freeman and the Irish. We think they'll go undefeated in independent play and will be the no-brainer candidate for the top at-large spot. And at 6, we have the Texas Longhorns. Again, SEC bias. They're going to be the best Power 4 non-champion. At 7, we have the Oregon Ducks. And this would set up a potential 3rd meeting between the Ducks and the Buckeyes. Pretty funny to imagine, but would be pretty interesting to see. At 8, we have the Florida State Seminoles. And at 9, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. The 2 weaker Power 4 non-champions will go head-to-head in what should be a pretty interesting matchup, but we'll get more into that in a second. At 10, we have Alabama. A tough draw for Oregon, seeing as Alabama won't be bad at all. Definitely not what you want to see as a Ducks fan, but moving forward. At 11, we have the Tennessee Volunteers in a battle of the UTs versus Texas. Now, we would have Ole Miss here based on our SEC prediction, but one of our commenters correctly called us out. Tennessee would have a much better resume than Ole Miss based on our predictions. So we're doing a bit of a bait and switch here with the Volunteers taking their place. And for our final spot, we have the mandatory group of 5 bid, and we see it going to the Memphis Tigers. That's it for the seeding. You have the full layout right here on your screen. And for the first round, the most important thing to remember about these matchups is that the lower seed will have the home field advantage in these games. For the first time, we have on-campus playoff games. It's going to be electric, probably our favorite part of the new playoff format. And starting with our first game, we have Florida State taking on Oklahoma State. And simply put, we think the Seminoles are taking this one. That defense is going to be phenomenal. We don't think the Cowboys have the firepower that the Seminoles do. And the game's going to be in Tallahassee, so that's a pretty easy pick in our eyes. And next up, we have another easy pick. Sorry, Tiger fans. We just don't think the Group of 5 champion is going to be anywhere near the level that a Notre Dame will be this year, especially on the road. So we have Notre Dame winning that matchup pretty handily. And next, we have what should be a great matchup in Alabama and Oregon. 2 Heisman finalists by our prediction in Jalen Milroe and Dylan Gabriel. And we're actually predicting our first upset in 12-team playoff history right here. We have Alabama going over Oregon. Feel free to comment SEC bias. We just think Alabama is a more overall complete team than Oregon is this year. And last in the first round, it's the Battle of the Orange, the battle for the true UT. We have Tennessee taking on Texas. And sadly, Tennessee fans, we have your Volunteers losing this battle, but we think this is just the start. We think this could blossom a great new rivalry in the SEC. Battle of the UTs, mark it down right there. And heading into the second round, we have our New Year's 6 Bowls. We use that term loosely because some of the games won't be on New Year's. And starting with the Rose Bowl, we have Florida State taking on Georgia in a rematch from last year's Orange Bowl. And unfortunately for Seminoles fans, you'll have to wait to get your revenge on that splattering because we have Georgia going over Florida State once again, this time in Pasadena. And in the Cotton Bowl, we have Notre Dame taking on Utah. Should be a very gritty matchup. This game just feels right to us for some reason. Should be a very interesting defensive battle. We could see the score of this one ending up something beautiful like 14-12 or 17-13. A true college football game in every metric. but we see Notre Dame taking this one. We think their offense is just a little bit better, and we think their defense is a good bit better. And if it's really over, it would be a great final run for Kyle Whittingham at Utah. And in the Sugar Bowl, we have the Alabama Crimson Tide taking on Ohio State in a battle of the mid to late 2010s juggernauts. Old foes clash once again, and this time we have Ohio State taking the victory over the Crimson Tide. We think Kalen DeBoer will pick up right where Nick Saban left off by losing to a Big Ten team in the playoffs. Jokes, we think Alabama will be fine, but we just don't think this is their year. And last, in the second round, we have Texas taking on Miami in the Orange Bowl. Another interesting matchup, two NFL quarterbacks with great offenses duking it out. But we think Texas's defense will be a step ahead of Miami's. They'll be able to disrupt that Miami offense more than the other way around. And we think that'll be the true difference maker. We have Texas in an upset, technically, if you want to call it that, over the Miami Hurricanes. And that was the second round. Heading into the Final Four in the Peach Bowl, we have Georgia taking on Notre Dame. Another matchup that just feels right to us for some reason, but the overall narrative for this game will be that Notre Dame is essentially a diet Georgia this year. They'll have pretty similar teams overall, great quarterbacks, elite defenses, solid run games, and offensive lines, but Georgia's just going to be flat out better in almost every way, and we don't think this game would finish particularly close. It may even be a bit anticlimactic for one of the final games of the season. We have Georgia winning once again pretty handily with a potential final score around 38-24. And that's not to say Notre Dame will be bad. It more so just shows how much better Georgia will be than almost everyone this year. And following the Peach Bowl, in the Fiesta Bowl, we have the Ohio State Buckeyes taking on the Texas Longhorns. We think Texas will have both a great offense and defense, and we think their offense will probably be a decent bit better than Ohio State's, actually, at least statistically. But Ohio State's defense, once again, is going to be the moral of the story in this game. They're truly elite. They're one of the best units we've seen coming into a season in recent memory, and we'll take Ohio State over Texas with that defense showing out in a game that should be decently close by the end of it. And that leaves us with one final game, the granddaddy of them all, the College Football Playoff National Championship. We have the number 1 seed Georgia Bulldogs taking on the number 2 seed Ohio State Buckeyes. Pretty predictable, but I think what we'll come to find in the 12-team format is that even though there will be a few more exciting matchups every year, the top 4 or 5 teams ultimately are still going to be the ones making it to the national title game. It's just the reality of the sport, and it's what we are predicting this season. And in this matchup, you'll see 2 great offenses taking on 2 elite defenses. We see it being really close. In the first half, it might look like a low-scoring affair even, but the defenses will wear out. And in the second half, we'll see a lot more explosions. Ideally, it would go back and forth with one team pulling away at the very end. And for cinema's sake, that's what we're predicting. We have the Georgia Bulldogs losing to the Ohio State Buckeyes via a walk-off field goal, with the final score being Georgia 30, Ohio State 33. You can't script it better than that, folks. A truly magnificent end to another magnificent college football season, with Ohio State as the national champions of the 2024-2025 college football season. And that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, like we said at the beginning of this video, be sure to go ahead and like and subscribe. Feel free to comment your thoughts, whether it be positive, whether it be negative. We want to hear your opinions. Be sure to share it. That helps us out a lot. And stick around for our Week 0 preview coming later this week. It's going to be very interesting. There are a lot of good matchups in Week 0. And that's going to wrap it up for this video. We will see you in the next one.